BCA-101, Intro to Computers, Day 5. Okay, this was last Friday. And what we did, we started off focus on learning. We talked about change. We looked at the Google document about work. And it's really important you read the whole document to get an idea. And I asked the students to review it. And in the document it talks about GPA not being critical. That doesn't mean school isn't important or learning isn't important. It's just saying that sometimes GPA doesn't give you a true look at somebody in terms of if they'll be successful or be able to work in a certain environment. Some students are grade driven. That's not all bad, but later on we'll talk about some concerns about that. Or if you're only grade driven, what will you do just to get a good grade? That led me into talking about some people are task driven, which is great for a lot of different jobs because all you got to do is do the tasks. That's the key thing. But in the world of education, whether you're grade driven or you just want to get the homework done, sometimes that doesn't lead to as much learning. The student is more worried. The goal becomes to get the work done and not to learn. That makes sense? That's really important. And then I talked about knowledge driven. Is the student driven to learn the material instead of just getting a good grade or just getting the work done? So that might be a little different what you're used to, so you need the ability to adjust. Okay? And we talked quite a bit about that, and the students' responses to that were really varied. Some said yeah, people can adjust. Others said no, people don't adjust very well. So it depends on what it is and what you're attacking. You know, if you're asking somebody to give up something they believed in for a long time, sometimes it's an attack upon the very person that they are in order to adjust. What Google needs is people to be passionate about their commitment, but when they hear and see a new approach or a new idea, they're able to adjust. That's what they were getting at. Also in that article, they talked about people that don't have the ability to fail. As soon as they fail, they don't handle that very well, or they don't try enough things. They're so careful so that they don't fail. Okay? We're going to talk more about that later on. We talked a little bit about Bill Gates. Mostly he was a software guy. Steve Jobs was software and hardware. And we talked a little bit about why assignments are optional. The comments given for that in the curriculum was excellent. All right. That we covered. We talked a lot about hardware. We talked about the processor, memory, storage. In a lot of devices nowadays, like phones, the memory and storage are really combined. Okay, these two would be like together in flash. Hard disk. Okay, we talked about that. The read-only memory. There's programming information burnt right into chips. Computers can have expansion slots. We talk more about that later on. Computers tend to have a way to get information in, maybe a keyboard, get information out, maybe a screen, maybe a printer, or sound. Printer, sound. Input could be a keyboard. Touch screen is very popular. Might use a mouse to put information in. It might scan it in, the information, a barcode scanner at a grocery store. All those are ways to get information in. The software sits in memory, goes up and gets processed by the processor, it sends the results back. We can have a wide range of ports on a computer. The most popular are USB. That's standard, version 2, and now up to version 3. I list the old FireWire, but I'll probably take that off the list. That was very good for transmitting video, very popular in Apple created it, but you could use it in all computers. and then some way to connect into a network. You could either have a Cat5 cable and plug it in, or you can send the signal through the air to an access point. Like up here, this smartphone connect in through an access point wirelessly. We have computers in the lab, they connect cables here, here, then to here, then this is actually fiber optic from there to there, and we can connect through that way. So either wired, wireless, or fiber. Where do we store things? You can store it on a hard drive local to your machine. You can store it on a server. We're accessing it through a piece of equipment called a switch right here. So some key things we talk about here in hardware. All right, one more page. I think this is extremely important. If you look at this, we have hardware, the actual equipment. What communicates with the hardware is what's known as system software. System software communicates with hardware. Two major things, the operating system and utilities. Operating system is something like Windows, Linux. There's an operating system in your iPhone, the iOS. There's an operating system in other phones called Android, and there are a few others. There's actually quite a few, but we're just listing the main ones. Apple has an operating system in their laptops and computers, and they call that an iOS. Utilities, we have software that allows us to, for example, make folders, check on how much memory we have, check on the hard drive, see what processes are running, and so forth. And we'll learn more about utility software as we go along. What's really important here is there's this line right here. This stuff communicates with the hardware. An application communicates with the operating system. That's why if you have software that runs on Windows, you got to have some variation to make it run on Linux. If you get an app that works on your Android, then you got to get a different app that works on your iPhone. And who communicates with all this? The user typically communicates with the application through a user interface, and you develop a user experience. Now, as we make people more experts in our class, the user then can communicate maybe all the way down to the hardware. But we'll talk more about that later on. Already you should be able to use some utilities, like create a new folder for on the hard drive to store information in. Last two words. Proprietary software would be, an example would be Microsoft. Their operating systems and their application suites and so forth are proprietary. They own the licensing to it. They allow you to use it, but they don't allow you to duplicate it. Open source comes from the idea that the source that created the software is open to anybody to change, adjust, and so forth. Typically, there's no charge for this software, so it's also free. But there's more to the word open source than just being free. Okay? Very important to be able to distinguish here between these two. For example, I'm sure open source Android operating system is really open source. Firefox is open source. Chrome and a lot of other types of software. We downloaded Putty. That's open source. Anybody can download it, use it, and so forth. All right. Well, that's it for the work from this particular day. Thanks.